Thank you for this beautiful invitation, and thank you for inviting me to speak about two things I feel very passionate about. One of them being pride and helping our community, our joint community, to get there, to true decriminalisation, and on that road. Also, I like talking about music, and I'm absolutely proud to be here as someone who I feel was very influenced by what Philip did and what all the guys in the band did, because without them, as somebody recently said, they kicked down the door that the rest of us walked through. And I feel that's very true, because they certainly inspired me over the years to, where I was being told for years to put up and shut up. As was said eloquently by Philip earlier, it wasn't the easiest time for anyone. If you were a woman, you were sometimes treated as a second-class citizen, but certainly if you were gay, you could be arrested for just simply holding hands with somebody in the main street of Dublin after the turn of the century. In actual fact, over 1,000 men were given penal service, were given sentences at that time, and there's a possibility that now with decriminalisation coming along in that climate, thankfully, that there may be some recompense, and they will be considered less criminal than they were. What was it like growing up in Dublin as a gay man at that time? Jesus, where do I begin? I have to say, during the 60s, of course, television mediated a lot of what we saw and a lot of what we experienced. Radio too. But I just want to say most stories have a beginning, middle and end, and mine today certainly starts with prejudice. Punk would be somewhere in the middle. In most stories, there's some transformation, and pride, I suppose for me, is, and I know for a lot of us here, it's a celebration of, not just for gay people, but for all of us as citizens of Ireland. So thank you, Joe, for the invitation, and thank you everyone else who invited me and for bearing with me this morning or this afternoon. Let's get my notes rightly in order here. 2. Right. Like Philip, I also went to the CBS. I went to Marino. It was further up the road. Joey's was in between. There was great rivalry between all the CBS schools. I was also very interested in theatre. As you can see, I was involved in amateur dramatics. My band, Chant Chant Chant, happened on the heels of the Radiators leaving Dublin. They inspired so many of us. And one of the places that we found refuge was a safe space called the Project Arts. The photograph on the right is my good self and our guitarist Robbie playing a gig supporting the Radiators when they came back in 1981. And true to his word, Philip had been in touch with us and said, look, I like what you're doing. If we're ever back in Dublin, you guys are going to be on the bill. And true to his word, that's the kind of guy he was. He gave us the gig. As regards the logo of the band, I think it's just by osmosis, as Philip Mullen was talking earlier. Yes, certainly I found a repression and knew I needed to find my voice. Many of us found our voice through punk rock and became poets. I know certainly that the lyrics I ended up writing and it became revelatory to me because it helped me understand that there would be light at the end of the day, are expressed in almost subconsciously when I look at the image of the band, that, as I said, almost happened by osmosis. Everybody in the picture has masks on, and the feeling for me was that it was just paralysis, as was discussed earlier. Paralysis. Keep your mouth shut. As I said earlier, if you were gay or lesbian growing up in Ireland at that time, you didn't get a chance to express yourself very well. You were told to mind yourself when you were in school. You knew it didn't end well for Oscar Wilde. You knew it didn't end well for Roger Casement. So be what you can see and see what you can be. We needed heroes. We needed $1 million heroes like Philip Chevron to come along and put his Telecaster to the television screen and just say, there's a way out of here. So he threw a lot of light into a dark Ireland that was there at that time for many of us. I mentioned the Project Arts. The Project Arts became our cathedral at the time, because in the wake of bands like the Radiators having to leave Dublin, we had bands like Rudy, Protex, Berlin, DC9, Revolver, Virgin Prunes, Rocky Dev, and God, I love that name, Rocky De Valera and the Gravediggers. I remember Ferdia coming up to me and saying, Owen, I've got a great name. I'd met him in the Gaeltacht when I was a kid. And I just thought, here's someone I know. And here I just felt another chap along beside me manning the barricades. I just thought, Rocky De Valera and the Gravediggers. Fuck yeah, that's a great name. Bands like the New Versions, all of these bands I'm mentioning appeared in what was called the Dark Spaces gig in the Project Arts Centre, because it provided a safe alternative space for us. Nobody else really wanted us. There were a few individuals brave, like the Purdy brothers, Dick Purdy, who hired a space and put on the first punk rock festival in Dublin, an all-day event in St. Anthony's Little Theatre with, as I call them, the San Franciscans. But the Franciscans were always very kind to people who wanted to come along and give it a go. And I'm glad to say that when I got involved with my own little amateur, won't call it little, it was a good amateur drama group, they also gave us a home when we needed one. But the project had tried too. In 1976, Gay Sweatshop came, and as in keeping with the times, there was lots of reaction and outcries. It was called a foul, filthy, stinking muck, which is basically revealing what a lot of people thought about anything to do with gay politics or gay identity being exposed or being celebrated, for want of a better word. So paralysis, finding your voice, that was certainly a theme for me. I know, like, one of the first songs I got to write was that feeling of you're waiting in the woods and you're just waiting for the branches to open and the light to come through. And I know that certainly by the time Philip's band came along, they were very welcome, because as Philip Mullen discussed already, contraception wasn't available. You were basically told to fuck off to England. Abortion wasn't available either. Divorce wasn't available. Homosexuality, no. There was a lot of pejorative things. I mean, I could stand here and say my name is Eoin Freeney. My pronouns are he, him, fine. But if I told you some of the names collectively I was called, faggot, queer, bumboy, whatever, some of the better ones I've been called are son, friend, and more lately husband. And I'm proud to say, as a gay man, my husband is here today. Stephen, thank you. And I want to thank all of you people who voted and took Ireland, took it to a place where I could actually say here, yeah, this is my man. The 1980s, I won't go over it, Philip's eloquently covered it. Some people forget that unemployment was at 18% in 1980. So it's no wonder thousands were sailing. If I think back about the television and what it mediated to me and my generation, was the fact that it was 61 when RTE came along. That was before D Forbes and D4. We had D Valera opening up the station for us. As Marshall McLuhan said in '64, he predicted really and used the word global village for the first time. So outside influences were coming through the television to us. 69, for example, we had Apollo 11. 66 and 70, sports-wise, we had both World Cups, which for me meant by 70 you got a colour television. Prior to that, we were all living in black and white. And you rented your television if you were lucky. But without putting too fine a point on it, there were dark times too, as most of us are aware. 75 was the end of the Vietnam War, but unfortunately war on our own country. You had the Dublin, Monaghan and Dundalk bombings. I remember working in a shop in Dublin and having to check through everything upstairs in the shop to see was there anything nefarious that might lead to a bad end for a lot of us. So I didn't mention 76 or 77. Well, there it is there, sorry. 76 and 77, this happened. And as I said, that was a revelation for many of us, because this band articulated a lot of the frustration our generation felt with what had come before. And it was the first time we could actually feel we could hold two fingers up and say, enough already, we're done with the shame. You know, the narrative that was fed to us, was we're not good enough. The narrative that was fed to us was, you know, go out to Fairview Park, where the rubbish of the city was dumped for hundreds of years. And, you know, and it happened to somebody, that's where they met their demise. We'll come to that later. Two things stood out to me as a punk rocker in those days. Besides being in a couple of bands, I was very impressed with when, for example, Tom Robinson came to town. And I was also very impressed when smaller cooperatives like this one, the Bodies gigs and the Magnet happened, because that gave another door. I think a certain Philip Mullen might have been involved in that at the time, and my good friend Vinnie Murphy. There's some of the bands that actually got a foothold finally on stage. The idea behind that community effort was that let's make a record collectively. We'll all play gigs at the alternative weekends. Different bands came down from the north. Different bands came down from Cork, or came up from Cork. You had the Non-Attacks. You had The End from Dublin. You had Micro Disney, importantly. And local bands like Of Xerox, The Departure, Some Kind of Wonderful. It was a vibrant part of Dublin that, when Philip made his exit for those brief years, happened in his wake. And I think he made no small contribution to that time. Me in particular, second important moment as a gay man, I stood in UCD and a guy called Tom Robinson came on stage. And that just changed my life. Because for the first time in Ireland, I didn't feel so lonely anymore. When he sang the song, Sing If You're Glad to Be Gay, and the whole hall erupted singing along with him, I had to do a double check. Because for me, seeing all these people sing this song, I said, they're not gay, why are they singing it? And it wasn't that they were singing it to say they were gay, but it was saying for me that they supported that idea, that alternative, that possibility. And they were saying to the old Ireland, two fingers, good luck. So that certainly was a huge moment. Sorry for bouncing around here, but it's all the pogoing I've probably been doing since 1956. I was already in nappies and bouncing around in my safety pins when Philip made his entrance in next door to the Gate Theatre. So the collective shame that was there, it was time that was starting to be put behind us. 1982 was a sad day because a young man walking, having had his last pint in Belton in Donecarney, walked down through Marino into Fairview Park. Some people thought he would be easy prey, and they jumped on him, and he ended up being badly beaten, and he died. But I know that's upsetting to talk about, but it needs to be talked about in context for the gay community in Dublin, because that was the moment the gay communities also said, enough already, and they took to the streets in 1983 with the trade union movement behind them. There'd already been a lot of collectives in Ireland through the women's movement and the gay rights movement already were semi-organised. So they took to the streets in 83 and said, no more. They took to the streets in 84 and 85. You know, the lyrics, I was reading over Philip's lyrics recently, and I just thought the lyrics of this song, in a way, spoke to me about stuff and how lonely I felt. And I'm sure how lonely that man felt as he died. He didn't want to be a martyr to anybody's cause. He just wanted to break free from the savage jaws. I don't want to change the world, just my own. But sometimes I feel so alone. Thank you, Philip. You made a lot of us feel less alone. I got involved in amateur dramatics over the years. I was lucky enough doing an O'Casey play, playing Johnny, God bless today, and I won a scholarship to do a course with the Amateur Drama League at the time, studying community theatre, and this resonated for me because I'd felt in the gay community there was a lot of positive things from people cooperating. So there was one moment in one of the amateur drama groups, though, that annoyed me particularly and made me want to do something really that was radical for me, which was starting my own theatre group. One of the people building the sets turned to me while we were building the sets for Juno and the Paycock, and he said to me, you know, Eoin, I've noticed something about these nails. And I said, what's that? He said, they have AIDS. I said, what do you mean? He said, these nails are bent. It was meant, like a lot of things, like when people say to you, what the hell are you doing having gay pride parade for? I mean, we don't have a straight parade. I said, well, you have it 364 days of the year. The gay community had to fight back in 1969 in Stonewall, as we know, and our Stonewall was Fairview Park. So that's why for the next 2 years that happened, that we took to the streets, and we're still doing so, thankfully. So yeah, I got involved and we started an amateur drama group in the gay community. It was wonderful because we found finally a safe space. We used City Arts Centre was very kind to us. We went upstairs in the Hirschfield, what was left of it, because it had been burnt down. The Gay Community Centre had been burnt down. So we went to the City Arts. They gave us a home whenever we needed to rehearse. Some of the pubs in Dublin were useful. So within a year we were already in the Abbey Theatre, doing unusual plays for us, like Lucretia Borgia by Gertrude Stein. Some very brave souls and talented people I met through the group was like James Barry there in the middle. And he went on to get very involved in the theatre group with us as we moved along. Another highlight was putting on a gay play in St. Anthony's Little Theatre. They gave us a home. We put on 3 one-act plays. The same place the Purdy Boys had found a punk home. We'd found a home there. We were very welcome. We'd wandered around homeless for a while. I can remember once going into the Working Men's Club, hoping they would be up to the job of maybe giving us a home. And for 2 weeks they let us rehearse there. And then we were asked by the committee to review our participation in the place. And I had to put my foot down and away and say, well, look, we happen to be a gay group. Have you a problem with that? And I remember somebody in the committee said to me, well, now, there's no homosexuals in this group, is there? And I said, the other fellow ribbed him and said, isn't he after fucking telling you? And I said, well, you know, we're gay. I hope you don't have a problem with it. Oh, Jesus, no, if you could be a herd of giraffes for all week here, coming in here. But we were given the elbow, unfortunately. But we did find a home, as I say, in, ironically enough, with the Franciscans. And this was the first play. I finally found my voice. I tried with music. But because of I'm saying here clearly, because of punk, in a way that's helped save my life and helped me find my voice. And I began to write for our community. Our community, the gay community, then needed to put different versions of ourselves, for ourselves and for others, up to be seen. This play was about a punk rock band in Dublin called the Pink Pagans, and people who had left Ireland, thousands were sailing, but who had come back to try and again join in the battle. And yeah, we had to go at some of the institutions at the time. We'll leave it at that. But it was certainly a fantastic experience to finally find a voice. I also got involved then in the Gay Pride Parade in 1991. There's a small group of us had been involved in ACT UP at the time. Dublin AIDS Alliance, for example, would have had a lot of members who were tied down to not rocking the boat, shall we say. So you could say they were slightly compromised. So they encouraged other people like myself to come out and agitate, educate and organise. We had the first Pride Parade in 1991. We worried like hell anyone would show up. Brave people came together to try and make it happen. It hadn't happened since 1985. So there was a 7-year break. That's why the GCN had the front there reading 7-year itch. So yeah, it was a wonderful event. Basically, we were invited to bring our tutus, bongos, and make noise and have a great time, and it's still going on today, thankfully. This was the parade on the day. You can see my dad was a staunch trade unionist, so he encouraged me to go ahead and invite, and we knew it was made sense to invite the trade unions, invite any parties on the left, invite any parties on the right. So you see a list of some of the organisations. It was interesting, a lot of people who were still very closeted stood on the sides and looked on, but before the parade was over, and certainly over the next few years, they got brave and came out and joined in the visibility. So visibility is key. Visibility is key because we notice, it's like Mr. Berger said in his book, Ways of Seeing, Thomas Berger, we see first and then we speak. The child learns to see first. So if we don't have a visibility of our possibilities of who we are and who we can be, we're not going to realise any of our potentials. Friday the 1st of November, Dublin Act Up is another thing I was involved in at the time. We did a protest, condoms not being available. Condoms were essential, as we all know, to help prevent HIV/AIDS. And we did a protest outside the Pro Cathedral. We had the three figures, hate, ignorance and fear, outside the Pro Cathedral. We handed out leaflets on the 10 mortal sins that we felt the Catholic Church were using to prevent HIV/AIDS. Get help. They were stopping in the way of condoms. They were stopping in the way of progress happening, we felt, on the AIDS situation. That was true. So there's another Act Up action we got involved with. It was the Hope Collective. Some of you are familiar with. We're putting on a band called Fugazi. Fugazi wanted Act Up to get involved and provide safe sex information. And there was safe sex information provided on the day. And Chumbawamba, I think, joined in on the gig as well. And we threw condoms gleefully into the audience. It's moving forward. Just Philip. I wanted to really just, but it's already been done, but I wanted to just say something on that. Philip stood under Cleary's clock waiting for his boyfriend to come on the bus to Unlaw, as we know. But there was something in it that clicked with me, which was that human need. He humanised what was not available to me at that time, which was be able to hug another man legally. And I know when COVID came along, we all had to wear masks again. There was something familiar about all that to me. It was familiar. It was about the HIV/AIDS thing coming back to haunt me again, wondering, was it safe to do this, safe to do that? And I think maybe a lot of us, having lived through that, can identify with what that fear would have been back for us in the day. Because now we're definitely in a different Ireland. Thankfully, people are living with HIV/AIDS as opposed to dying from HIV/AIDS. But Philip played his role by coming on board in 1985 1983 at, 85, yeah. A song, Yearning for Love, Wished for Embrace. I know when my own mum passed away during the AIDS crisis, not of AIDS, thankfully we were allowed in to see her. The last words she said to me was, "It's good to be hugged, isn't it?" You know, it's such a human thing. So we're in a different place now, under Cleary's clock. We're in a different place because people stood up and were counted, because people said enough was enough. I want to thank everyone in this room who voted during the marriage referendum. It's made a difference in many of our lives, and I think our future lives. I believe the writings of Philip, as in his song, where he speaks about wanting just a normal life like everybody else, ring true, because I think we've got a better country because of that. And we've got a better country because of people who have voted in a positive way. We've got through the nightmare of Fairview, and it empowered us. Punk music helped me, empower me and many others to join their threads in the tapestry of the country we have today. Fine, yeah, we've a gay Taoiseach, fair enough, but that is to celebrate. We now have marriage equality, and we now have the last bus to Unlaw. passing under Cleary's clock in a colourful celebration, and it's a country Philip helped make better, and many of us were empowered to do that because of him, and I thank him, and I thank you for your attention today. God bless.